The three pillars of cash flow are essential to you arriving at where you want to be. On the path to 100 million, I learned a lot of things, and cash flow, you hear this a lot, is really the lifeblood of your success. If you don't have cash flow, you can't maintain cash flow. The business, operation, portfolio, enterprise is really at an end. It's the air in your lungs. And the first one I want you to grab as a takeaway is remember to measure. Now, like most Australians, I was very flippant with money. I was loose. My attitude was I'll just earn more. You may have fallen for that, I didn't really sort of have this efficiency or respect around money. My attitude was, it doesn't really matter. I'd sort of shout mates, beers and friends and stuff and dinner. And I'm generous, but I was really quite silly and flippant with how I chose to acknowledge or respect this resource. And it wasn't until many years later, my very early 30s, I started to recognize it doesn't matter how much I earn. It seems to be wasted and gone at the end of the financial year. And strangely, I used to travel a lot in the plane for work back then. I had projects all over the country. So I was broke, but just at a different level. I was making a lot of coin, 3-4 million a year, but spending like crazy. So out of just habit, I started writing a few things down on the plane trips, right? And I started to take note of where large chunks were sort of going. And that was really the format or the beginning of taking charge of my finances. As silly as that sounds, I'm going to encourage you to measure. Now, that doesn't have to be fanciful. It doesn't need to be a spreadsheet. You don't need to be a guru on Excel. I'd probably say quite the opposite. But when you sit down at the end of the week, month, whatever that may be, start to take account of where this resource is going. Start to be responsible, because when you start to identify this leakage, you sort of start to see your habits and think, that's pretty silly. Last week I spent $280 on eating out, drinks or boozing it up, or spent $350 on whatever, dresses and a pair of shoes, when I've got enough, or it will last me the next 8-12 months. You don't want to be wasteful. I'm not saying stingy, I'm saying see a bigger game. But for me, I had to start taking measure and recording how things were on a monthly basis, where it was going. And I can promise you, the habit of the rich, the habits of the moguls, the habits of the ultra wealthy, they're not stingy, but rather they're very clear about where this money is going. So measure, measure, measure. And that just means a scrap bit of paper. It just means, the back of a beer coaster. It doesn't matter. But you're starting to take charge and responsibility for where the stuff's going. So what that means is you might turn around and go, approximately, honey, we're spending 11.5 grand a month between us. Mortgage, school fees, kids, bus, this, that. But then you start to think, hang on, with 11.5, what would I start to earn to make me comfortable? If I could push my earnings out to 15, 16, 17, 17,500 a month, honey, we'd be saving the best part of 5.5 grand every 4 weeks, or every 6 weeks, or every 3 months as a quarter. And that's where I started to go. My thinking was, all right, I sort of know where things are going now. There is quite a lot of leakage, and it helped me to arrest that leakage. The wasteful things I didn't need, the jet skis, the lavish holidays, and staying in all these amazing hotels that was probably a bit ahead of my time, ahead of my affordability. I started to cull them, push back a little, and be proud of the kind of cash that I was producing as savings. I was kind of happy that I had a cachet of money stashed away. And back then it was sort of, several $100,000. It's all relative. But that allowed me to start to think and consider, what do I need to earn to sort of become comfortable and truly get ahead? And those conversations, because I had understood where it was going and where it was sort of being wasted, it made those conversations in my head much easier to digest. It was a case of, I've got this expense, it's fixed, pretty much the best I can do now. Everything's trimmed back to a minimum. But if I can earn 15, 17 and a half, 18 grand a month, wow, that's $5,000-6,000 in the bank account every 4-week block. And as far as measure goes, that's one of the most fortuitous points that you'll hit. It's like, I'm getting this. I'm not rich, I'm not a billionaire, but I know where it's going, and I know that my 40, 45 hours a week is well spent. because I'm not just tearing it up and pissing it against the wall. So in hindsight, I wish I'd done that a lot sooner rather than my early 30s. I think maybe my early mid-20s would have been ideal. I would have been far more ahead of the curve than I currently am now. But there's some of the tips that I've certainly taken heed and I've learned a lot from. And quite frankly, they are the skills that are found in rich people all over the place. They don't waste, they're not boastful, but they do know where their money is going and they're not flippant with it. So I trust that helps you. I'll bring you two other pieces that'll tie in this beautifully and you'll start to understand just how it is you can take money and truly get ahead by investing that cash well. Happy investing.